Howdy. So here's my third installment of my unscripted impromptu rants. We're just going to call it a rant. I have two topics that I want to deal with tonight, and one of them is really short, but it's really, really cool, and it's my t-shirt. This is an honest to God 1988 World Tour t-shirt. I saw them October 28th in Little Rock, Arkansas on this tour. And the only reason I know that is because the tour dates are listed on the back and I was able to check it out. So that's the only reason I can state that with any sort of authority. The interesting thing is I wore this shirt for several years after buying it. And of course I wore it. It got laundered a lot. And then it sat in a box at my mom's house for 30 some odd years. And Mom found it as we were going through the garage about a month ago, and pulled it aside, washed it twice. It still has just a little bit of that garage funk smell, but it's clean. I'm surprised at how vibrant the colors of the silkscreen are, and even on the back with all the tour listings, it's just incredibly vibrant. So I'm really glad to have this shirt back. I will wear it. It doesn't quite fit me like it used to. I'm guessing that it shrunk, or maybe I just grew out of it a little bit. But we're gonna say that it shrunk just to keep me happy. So anyway, this was the first thing that I wanted to talk about. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is one of my friends and a former guitar student of mine commented on my sabotage video when I said, hey, I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the next one of these, but maybe I'll talk about my Iron Maiden reissue. And he said, yeah, talk about the Iron Maiden reissue, because I've only ever heard one Iron Maiden album, Number of the Beast, and he was kind of ashamed about that. And he said, I want to know more. So that kind of cinched it. And so I just want to talk about Powerslave. This isn't going to be an album review. It's going to be more my relationship to this record and how it formed the way I started to consume music after listening to it. This was the first Iron Maiden record I had actually heard in its entirety. Obviously, growing up in junior high and high school in the 80s, we heard Iron Maiden. But I had always liked everything that I ever heard. But they were just oddball songs here and there. I always read about them in Circus and Cream and Hit Parader magazine. And I liked the whole thing. It was really cool. But one of my friends loaned me this. Again, I don't even remember what year it was, but had loaned me his tape copy for a weekend. And I remember it was in October, whatever the year was. I think I was in junior high. And what I would do is I would go home after school before Mom and Dad came home, and I would lie down on the floor next to the stereo, and I'd put the tape in and hit play, and I would doze until Mom and Dad got home. Sometimes it would take, sometimes I'd be home an hour and a half before they'd actually get home, and I'd fall asleep with this album playing. And I always loved it because it was a long enough album that if I woke up for a few minutes, chances are it was still playing. And if it wasn't, I would just reach over. Got a moth in here. I would just reach over and flip it over and hit play, and then I'd doze back off again. And then in the evenings before bed, I'd actually sit and listen to it. So cassette copy was my first experience with this. I've never had this on vinyl, so I'm glad I found this. This is the 40th anniversary reissue. I actually got it at Walmart of all places for like $24.95, which I'm still a little stunned at the prices of reissues being $25 and such, but this one I think they could have asked more for, and I would have been okay paying it, but I got this for a really good price. So anyway, here's the front. Here is the back, and then here is the gatefold. And this panel is really interesting because this background right here has a little secret to it, and I'll show you in just a second. So even if this was the only swag included in the package, I would still have been pretty happy about it. And it's a reproduction of the inside record sleeve, if I remember correctly. And then I always remember this photo from the promotional materials for this album, that in Guitar for the Practicing Musician in Circus, that was the picture they had. And I always liked that. And on the front side of it is a little essay written by Steve Harris. And it starts out with the headline, "There's no such thing as a perfect album, but Powerslave, yeah, that one's great. I wouldn't change anything about it, or any of our albums. They're set in stone, a statement about the band at that particular time." And when it comes to perfect albums, I've got to disagree with Steve a little bit. I would say that this one is about as perfect as it gets. I have one quibble with it, and you'll see that as we go along a little bit. Here was another little piece of swag that was included. It is one of those 3D posters. I should probably frame this and hang it up and scare the kids with it. So that might be fun. Matter of fact, this was my desktop background for years. And so I'm actually really partial to that image. And where this package gets really cool is, remember this panel that we saw? Well, all of this medallion in the background is the record. And I'm not really a big fan of specialty vinyl, and I did not know this had some sort of specialty vinyl. I just figured it was going to be standard black. But here is one side, and it's not even, there's no track listing. It doesn't even tell you what side it is. And then here is the other side, and that's just pretty badass. And I'll tell you the truth, I haven't listened to this on the record player sitting back here yet. To be perfectly honest, it's always within my CD copy of Powerslave is always within arm's reach of the stereo. So when I want to listen to it, I either put it on Spotify or actually put my physical copy of the CD in and play it. But I have the weekend off. I have no gigs this weekend, so I'll make a point to actually sit down and listen to this on vinyl, because I have a lot of other albums that I've acquired recently that I haven't listened to yet on vinyl. So I need to make a weekend night out of that. Again, I said this wasn't going to be a record review, and it's not, but just kind of go through the songs. Aces High. Iron Maiden can always start a record with a bang, and any of their historical themed songs, this one being about the Battle of Britain, it's just a banger. 2 Minutes to Midnight, a commentary on the state of the Cold War in the mid-'80s. And some of you may be too young to remember the Doomsday Clock, and it used midnight to show you where nuclear war was imminent. And at one point, the clock was 2 minutes to midnight. Sorry, I'm actually doing it. It should be that way from where you're sitting. but 2 minutes to midnight. And so this was a commentary on the state of the Cold War at this point. I mentioned that I had only one problem with this album, and it's not even that much of a problem, and it's not going to be the problem that a lot of people expect. And it's the next tune, Lost for Words, Big Aura. I've talked to so many people that just say Lost for Words is a throwaway track, that the album would be perfect if it wasn't for Lost for Words. I disagree. I think Transylvania is probably the absolute greatest instrumental that Iron Maiden ever did, but I think Lost for Words is a close second. I absolutely love it. Flash of the Blade, song about sword fighting, and we all know Bruce got into fencing. He might still be. I actually, in my 20s and early 30s, spent a little time fencing. Not fencing at any sort of notoriety or standard, but I was a member of our local fencing club, and I spent 2.5 years fencing semi-regularly and enjoyed the snot out of it. If you've never fenced, you should try it at least once. You know you're not going to get hurt, but ultimately when it comes down to it, when you pull that mask down, there's someone coming at you with a sword. It's absolutely exhilarating. Great way to get the blood going. Flash of the Blade, absolutely a stunning song. Here's where I have a problem. It's the Duelists. Why have two songs about sword fighting on the same record? Or if you do have them on the same record, why have them back to back? The Duelists, nothing wrong with the song. It just feels unnecessary. Feels like a fifth wheel in this position on the record. And you know, Flash of the Blade is such an engaging, galloping tune, that even if the Duelist was the greatest song they'd ever done, it might get overshadowed a little bit. So that's my only complaint. If the Duelist was not on this record, I wouldn't be disappointed. I think it would still be an amazing record. Now we get to side two. This, for me, is where the rubber really hits the road. I'll give another hot take. I think this side two of Powerslave might actually be the greatest side of any record in all of metal. And again, I know people are gonna fuss because they're gonna say, yeah, but Back in the Village sucks. Back in the Village is a freaking burner. I teach humanities at our local college. And when we talk about music and we talk about tempo, I usually play Claude Debussy's Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun to show slow and rubato tempo. And then when it comes to fast tempo, I always play Back in the Village because, you know, the song just cranks. Obviously, it's not first album Megadeth thrash metal, but it's really hauls ass. And so I think Back in the Village is absolutely wonderful. One of the best things Iron Maiden ever did. And then of course there's Powerslave, 9 minutes of 9 minutes of commentary and reenactment of what's known as the Book of the Dead, the Pyramid texts. And sinister and menacing and absolutely haunting. And then there's the gold standard for me. It's the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And again, I mentioned I teach humanities at our local college. And when we talk about literature and we get into epic poetry, and we talk about Coleridge's Rime of the Ancient Mariner as a way of being able to experience a piece of of epic literature in an hour. It takes about an hour to read the whole poem. It might take longer if you're not used to reading archaic language. And I usually play them snippets of the song as we talk about the layout of the progression of events in the song, and how each one of these episodes in the song has a different musical theme. But Rime of the Ancient Mariner, I remember going to the midnight movie in high school, and they were playing Live After Death, the movie, and that whole segment where they're playing Rime of the Ancient Mariner was one of the most magical things I had ever seen. And my connection to Rime of the Ancient Mariner is I read it in our senior literature class in high school. And after we covered it in class, I read that poem every day for the remainder of my senior year. Or maybe the class was in the junior year and I somehow ended up with a copy of the book for the next year, and I read it every day. And I always tell my students, if you're going to sit down and read Rime of the Ancient Mariner, put on Juju by Susie and the Banshees, or put on All My Colors, Zimbo. Put on Zimbo by Echo and the Bunnymen for some mood as you're listening to it. It would be distracting to listen to Rime of the Ancient Mariner as you're reading Rime of the Ancient Mariner. But put on the Juju record and read Rime of the Ancient Mariner and tell me that's not a moody experience. So yes, I'm really sold on Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And because I am so biased to the poem, I think that may have affected the way I consumed this song. And then of course having the sinister Powerslave come before it and just the frantic Back in the Village, I really think this is like a perfect side of this record. You could also say the same about obviously the 2112 side of 2112. Side one of Moving Pictures, absolutely perfect, stunning record. There are several records that matter of fact, that's an idea for a future video now that I think about it. Not perfect records, but perfect sides of records. I'm going to do that at some point. But yes, this album really struck me. And the album that comes after it, Somewhere in Time, I almost feel like it's part two of this. I really feel like I can listen to those two records as a companion piece, kind of the way in the last video I had said that I always view Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath and Sabotage as the same record. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Iron Maiden for my impromptu rant, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have some comments or some questions. That would be really slick because I love the conversations I get to have through the comment section. Anyway, next week I think I've got to sit down and listen to it, but the original Alice Cooper band just released a new record. Everybody except for Glenn Buxton, and apparently Alice said he's got a new hotshot guitar player from Nashville who looks like Glenn Buxton, and from what I've heard plays like Glenn Buxton. I may talk about the new Alice Cooper record next week. I may not. It may be something else that comes up. But anyway, thanks for hanging out. I would like for this series to be just nonsense I want to talk about, but you know what? If there's something you'd like me to rant about, say something and I'll see what I can do. Anyway, I've gone on too long. I'll talk to you later. Bye.